Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Dad Edge podcast. I'm Larry Hagner, your host and founder of this show. Listen, if you're an imperfect father, you're in the right place. Just saying that. We're all a bunch of imperfect fathers just trying to be better. And that's what this podcast is dedicated to. Been doing this now for 6.5 years, almost 7 years, have had a variety of different guests on the show to talk about fatherhood, their professional careers, doing the work that makes us come alive, marriage, communication, parenting, patience, having a tribe, being a better leader, mastering our finances, all kinds of different topics. And today, I have a topic for you guys that I think will really, really hit home for you and will really resonate with you. I heard it stated on one of our previous podcasts that the average massive life event will happen to us every 36 months. Now, think about that for a minute. A massive life event could be just about anything. It could be a career transition. It could be the loss of a job. It could be the gain of a new job. It could be having one child. It could be having your second. Maybe it's your third. Maybe it's getting married. Maybe it's getting divorced or separated, then getting remarried. It could be a death in the family. It could be a number of different things. But if you really look at all the statistics out there, it is actually proven that the average human will go through a life-altering event every 36 months. And what we don't like, though, as human beings, is we don't necessarily like to go through transition. We want to go, we like the steadiness. We don't like surprises. In fact, we don't call surprises surprises when they arise. We call them problems when they arise. But how do we actually embrace change? Because we know that it's coming. How do we embrace change in our professional careers? Maybe it's something that we thought we wanted to do, like my guest today, and we decided, hey, that really no longer serves me. I'm going to go do something else. I want to do the work that makes me come alive. And if you really think about it, when we're 18 years old and we're going to college or a trade school or whatever, how really are we supposed to know, okay, this thing that I'm actually choosing to do or study is actually the thing that I want to do for the next 40 or 50 years? It's virtually impossible. Number one, we're usually at a pretty immature age at that age to really decide what it is that I want to do. Plus, over the next 20, 30, 40 years, a lot of things change. And how we thought life was going to be, it doesn't necessarily go that way. And we need to ebb and flow and change. Also, this shows up in our relationships, shows up in our marriages. It also shows up in our parenting, all kinds of different things. But how do we ebb and flow, and how do we maximize our time, our bandwidth, and to ensure that we embrace change and not necessarily resist it? Because one thing is going to be constant. That is change. Change will always be there. It's what we do with it that is most important. My guest today, he is a part of Dad Edge Alliance Accelerator. You guys have heard me talk about it many, many times. The Dad Edge Alliance Accelerator Mastermind is an outcarving group for what we call our dad, husband, business owner group. So you have to own a business in order to be a part of that group. It's a pretty elite group. As far as the men that we have in there, all of them are highly successful business owners, like my guest today, who's been doing life with us for the past several months. And he actually grew up in Mississippi. He also joined the Coast Guard, moved to New England. He actually went to law school and became a lawyer, and then transitioned out of that to become a full-time real estate investor with over 1,200 multifamily units now to his name. So huge transition. The other transition that has happened in his life, I'm going to let him talk about it, actually just happened this past weekend. And then there's going to be another transition that's going to be happening next month. So this show and this theme today, man, it is all about transitions, and it's all about how we can embrace change. And I can't think of anybody better in our Dad Edge Accelerator Mastermind than Nick Brown. So what's up, Nick? Good to have you here, my man.
Larry, thank you so much for having me. It is an absolute privilege and honor to be on your show. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
My pleasure. Dude, your background is fascinating. And I also know without a background, there also was probably a fascinating childhood. So I'm really interested to hear about what your childhood was like growing up.
Man, I had a great childhood. I feel very fortunate to have the parents I did. They divorced when I was 8, but very, very supportive, from both sides of that. Grew up in a small town called Fulton, Mississippi, and bounced back and forth between, but basically grew up playing sports. I mean, I played baseball every summer, played football in the fall, even as a kid. So I started playing football when I was like third grade, and baseball and t-ball when I was 5 or 6 years old. My dad coached the t-ball team and coach pitch, and then up into Little League. And really grew up with a pretty tight-knit group of guys that all went through together playing ball and supported each other, pushed each other. I think I think sports kept us out of trouble. But by the time I turned 17 or 18, I knew that Mississippi, was not going to be a long-term space for me. I'd been there pretty much my whole life, and I can't really describe it other than, you look around and you see, you sort of see what life's going to be like. And I wanted more. I wanted to explore. I've always had a pretty curious soul, and I wanted to get out. And my ticket out was the Coast Guard. I'd seen folks leave town and go look for a job and try to, try to work their way in. It seemed like they came back pretty quick. They were back within, 3 to 6 months, it seemed. And I wanted to sort of fireproof that with doing something cool. And so joining the Coast Guard checked a lot of boxes for me. It was doing something cool. It was doing something to give back, being of service. At the time, I was like, look, worst case scenario, I do a tour, get some pretty cool experiences. I could put military on my resume, and I'll see the world. And also, it's going to get me close to the beach. I lived in rural Mississippi, up in the northeast part, about an hour south of Memphis, Tennessee. But I always loved going down the beach. So Coast Guard checked a lot of boxes for me. I dropped out of school my junior year of college, took the leap. I dropped out of school about the same time that my dad, and I'll tell you a little bit about my parents. My dad was paying for my college. They essentially had paid for my older brother's college, and they were going to do it for me. But for whatever reason, the financial situation at home was not, as stable as I thought. And so I found out that he was actually he had taken a second job at night to pay for my college. And that just broke my heart. He didn't tell me about it. And I was like, all right, I'm not allowing this. And at the same time, he had made me read Dave Ramsey's Total Money Makeover before I could get my driver's license when I was 16. And so I knew I didn't want any debt. So the combination of not wanting to go into debt for school, not really knowing what I want to do with my career, and my dad working pushed me over the edge, and I joined the Coast Guard. And that's where I got started.
That's quite a background, man. Let's go back for a moment to football, baseball, growing up in that sports family. What was your dad like as far as supporting you, coming to your games? So I want to know about that from a sports perspective, because I know you're a former athlete, but I also want to know, I would love to steal from your dad at the same time, meaning like, what were some of the amazing life lessons that he taught you?
Dad never missed a game. He was an engineer for the university, in our Mississippi State University, and he was at every single game. I can't ever remember him not being there. And so for me, that was a rock. If I was having a bad game, I knew I'd look at him in the stands, and he would be there, and he'd look at me, and he would shake his head, or even sometimes he would come down and be like, look, you know what to do. Take a breath. Nothing you can do about the past. Nothing you can do about the last play. The only thing you have control over is what you do next. And whether or not you let the past, or whether or not you let, the previous play come into the next, that's solely on you. And I can remember also, I was Little League, and I was scared to throw a curveball with three balls. So I pitched a little bit in Little League, and I was scared to throw a curveball because I thought I didn't know that I wasn't confident that I could throw it for a strike. And he's calling the pitches, and it's a 3-2 count, and he calls a curveball, and I shake it off. I'm like 12 years old, and he calls it again. This is my dad giving the plays to the catcher. Catcher's giving the pitch to me. I shake it off again. He calls timeout, walks out there, and he's like, "What's going on?" I was like, "Dad, you're calling a curveball." And he's like, "Yeah, I want you to throw a curveball." And I was like, "I can't." I was like, "Dad, I don't want to walk him." You know, it's like either bases loaded or something. I was like, "I don't want to walk him." And then he just turns around, and there's like this girl walking, 100 yards away. And he just goes, "Must be jelly because jam don't shake like that." And I was just like, "What?" And he
Oh,
said,
that's good.
and I started laughing, and I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Just relax." He said, "You know how to throw a curveball. Throw the curveball." So I was like, "All right." So I went back and called it again. Ended up striking the kid out with a 3-2 curveball. And just stuff like that. Just keeping it. I would describe him as he's a stoic guy. He's a disciplinarian. He ruled the roost in my house with the discipline side. He spanked me whenever I needed it. Like, I needed spankings growing up. Some kids I think you could probably talk to, but I was not that kid. I was not smart enough, I guess, to put two and two together. But I did know that it hurt, and so. But at the same time, like, he loved me. I mean, he would, when he was disciplining me, he would explain to me what was going on. I can't remember him ever being angry at me. He would say, you're gonna get a spanking. This is why. And if you want to avoid this in the future, this is what you do. And then he would carry it out. And of course I'm upset. And then he just sits with me until I'm okay. He just sits with me until, like, all right, you okay? You know what you did? And then he would, like, make me repeat back the lesson. And so he was a heavy force in my life for a long time. Still is. I mean, we talk pretty much every other day. I call him all the time. I'm like, "Dad," and I'm not as good as he is, but we have a 2-year-old, and Christina from a previous relationship, and he's in a stage where he's very defiant. And I'm like, I call him, I'm like, "Dad, like, what would you do right now?" He's like, "Look," just don't, just give him a warning, just tell him, "Hey, look, you messed up. Don't," and explain it to him, and then move on. And so that was my dad growing up. Was cool head, pretty funny, and usually had a sense of humor, but also had a pretty big range of sense of humor, but he could go to disciplinarian pretty quick.
The cool thing about that, man, is there's a couple lessons there that I want to make sure that the audience got. Number one, your dad did a really good job of, in that moment, and I want to make sure people got the lesson in the moment, when he pointed out that girl, of getting you to relax, right? And throwing a distraction. Because listen, I have kids that are older than yours. And, my oldest is 15. I have a 13-year-old. And so obviously we've been in kids sports, youth athletics for that long, for a long time. And parents, man, they get crazy, man, like crazy. And especially the coaches, like, they can fly off the wall. Like, I could see how your dad could have handled that 2 different ways. And I think he handled that the right way. He could have gotten in your face and told you to throw a curveball because I said so, which would have probably put more pressure on you, which probably you wouldn't have gotten the result that you did. Instead, he decided to kind of look around and say, "Hey, how can I get my son to relax a little bit? Like, how can I maybe ease some of the pressure that he's feeling right now versus put more pressure on that's going to probably hack his performance, in half anyway." Right. So I love the fact that your dad did that. The other cool thing too is, whether you agree with spanking or not, right, or whether you agree with certain disciplinary action or not, you don't hold that against your dad. Like, there are several of us that, we view that as, borderline abuse, or we view that as, like, my dad was terrible because, he spanked me a few times. But the fascinating thing about being on this side of the interview screen is that most of the men that I talked to that were spanked or disciplined were like, "Yeah, I kind of deserved it. I stepped out of line quite a bit." Not saying that you guys in the audience that you should, start picking up spanking or anything like that. But I think it's cool that a lot of guys our age and in our generation take a little bit of ownership in that. Be like, yeah, man, I was kind of a hellion. Like, kind of deserved it a little bit. It was a bit rebellious. But what's you alluded to a little bit more of what the relationship with your dad is like now. I'd like for you to talk a little bit more of that, as far as like you go to him, you call him. It sounds like you guys have a really fantastic relationship even as adults now.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting how he went to such a force in my life, and then it slowly evolved to really more of a mutual friendship. And he's and I say that because when I joined the Coast Guard, he respected that a lot. Because when I came back, from boot camp, anybody that's ever gone through that and come back to your hometown, it's just weird. I can't explain it other than you've been gone for probably longer than you've ever been gone. This place looks and feels just a little bit different than it used to. And so I knew I was carrying myself a little bit different. And then when I went to law school, Dad was super proud. And so he started asking me little legal questions. I mean, he was getting to the age where he needed to start thinking about, all right, when I go on Social Security, how do I supplement my Medicare? When I retire, like, what does my will look like? And so he started leaning on me for more real life stuff, and where he had been the teacher pretty much for the last, at the time, 26 years. He started being more of the student, and I was sharing what I knew and was trying to help him out as much as possible. But I would say the relationship really changed when I started getting into real estate, and Dad was my first investor. And when I started writing him checks, I would say that's when the full evolution of the relationship happened, because he just fully respected me as a man and knew that I was going to be all right. And just, I think that he could finally feel, he finally, it like hit him. It was like, wow, I mean, I think I exceeded his expectations, and he felt like, all right, I've done my job here. And now I kind of have to pull his teeth a little bit when I'm asking him other questions. It's a little bit more of wrestling with him to give me a straight answer. Like talking to him about our will. He's 2.5. He's going through a fun stage, but he's also super defiant. He's testing our boundaries. He's trying to find some security and boundaries. And I'm pretty lax as far as most stuff goes. I play with him pretty hard and we wrestle, but there are times when it's like, all right, I can't let him have Cheez-Its for breakfast. Or
I don't know.
animal
There's
crackers
dairy
for
in it.
breakfast. Yeah, right. And so I just was like, all right, Dad, like when I was a difficult 2-year-old, how did you give me to eat? How did you give me to eat better? So that's where it's at now. Is we're such good friends. We talk about everything. He's been with me through this journey as a consultant, as a friend, as a mentor, as as a partner in some sense, in a lot of ways, in some ways. And so now I would say it's sort of leveled out and evolved into a mutual, respected, not level playing field, but a mutual respect for one another, where it's no longer necessarily parent-child, but it's friend to friend.
Yeah, you find the older that you get, you're like, number one, your dad was human, still is human, right? And then the other thing too is like, well, he's been down this road, probably knows a thing or two. And as we get older, I think we have a greater respect and an admiration for the level of knowledge that, our fathers have, which I think is really, really cool. I'm really fascinated to hear, how does a guy who goes to law school and then becomes a lawyer then suddenly transitions into real estate investor? So start with law first. Like, what was it about? Like, man, I think I want to be a lawyer. And then I would love to hear, like, maybe at some point during your journey with that profession, like, man, this doesn't really feel right. Maybe I want to do something different. But I would love for you to share that story and that transition.
Yeah, so getting out of the Coast Guard, I dropped out my junior year. I'd finished while I was in, and I had, I think at the time I had either 6 or 8 or 10, I forget exactly what it was, but there was a finite amount of time you had to use the GI Bill. And I knew that I wanted to go to graduate school, and I was deciding between law school and an MBA. And I decided on law school because I knew that I mean, Larry, you make it sound like I was super technical and intentional about all this stuff, but I kind of bumbled my way through for a while. And I felt like my decisions were kind of made more by the process of elimination. But essentially, I was either going to go to law school or MBA or get an MBA, and I chose law school because I knew that I was interested in law. I liked the idea of being a lawyer, as much as you can without, um, you know, having limited exposure to it. I knew a lot of lawyers could end up being business executives, but I also knew that an MBA would never be a lawyer. And so unless they went to law school. So I decided the law degree was the biggest bang for my GI buck. And I would come out with a license that was pretty exclusive. And that if I ever wanted to transition, that I felt like a lot of the skills that I would learn in law school would transition. And so I ended up going to law school. My first year, man, I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it. I was 28, my 1L year, first year of law school. I'd been out of academia for 5 years at the time, and I loved it. I absolutely loved law school. I had a blast. Um, and I was pretty set on being a lawyer that second year. But somewhere along the way, I did a summer associateship, was in a firm, and saw the older partners there, and they were still working for somebody else. They were still billing a ton of hours. They were dragging, and I was like, man, I do not want that life. And so I knew that I didn't want to carry out my practice at a big firm. If I was going to do something, I was going to be figuring out on my own. And I knew that pretty early on. And I met my current partner, Chad, in between the Coast Guard and before law school. And his career was something I found pretty fascinating. He was a lawyer, had his own law practice, but he also had a real estate gig mixed in with healthcare. So essentially he owned a healthcare company, and he owned the real estate that housed and provided the facility for the healthcare company, but he was able to juggle two things. And so I was, I think, second or third year of law school, and I was just sort of struggling because I had two offers. One was at a big law firm. The other one was at a corporate legal general counsel gig with a Fortune 500 company, and the other one was a big law firm in Maine. And I really didn't want to go to I didn't want to go to either one, to be honest. So I invited Chad out for a round of golf, and 3 holes and 3 beers later, he offered me a job. He's like, look, we don't really know what we're going to do with you, but I think we can figure it out. You can help me out on the legal side of the healthcare business, and then we'll sort of prop you up for a little bit while you build out your law practice. I'll send you my clients. We'll figure it out. Was kind of his attitude. So I'm basically, after law school, I had a clerkship with a judge. So I got into Texas, do the clerkship, then I come back and start practicing law with Chad. And I knew I wanted to do real estate on the side. The way in my head, I was going to practice law full time, but then slowly build a real estate portfolio, multifamily real estate portfolio on the side. And so that's what I was doing. I bought a duplex and then a commercial building just with our own money, saving up for the down payment, buying the building, running it for a few years, saving up a down payment, doing it again. And I was practicing law. I was walking into a bank, and anytime I go in the bank, I was always talking to the loan officers about any properties that they have that are in distress. You guys got anybody not making their payments or whatever, just trying to find a deal. It's always a deal hunter. But I went in there to get discovery documents. I was for the purpose of getting bank statements from a savings account for court. And it just so happened that they had hired a new president, and I knew him. Said, "Hey, Todd, how you doing?" And the conversation eventually got to, "You guys got any buildings you're trying to get rid of that you're foreclosed on?" He said, "Actually, we have a 9-unit right here down the road that I'm trying to get rid of. Do you want to go look at it?" And he asked me right then and there if I want to go look at it. I said yes. So we get there, and it's this beautiful, beautiful 9-unit building. It was built in 2015. It had 48 solar panels. It was 12. It had 12-inch double studded walls. So it was R50 insulation in the walls and R70 in the ceiling. Basically, the whole thing was built as a passive house, and they were foreclosing on it. And he said, "Do you guys want it?" And I made an offer on it. I said 575. Maybe I said 550. I forget. We ended up selling at 575, but 575. No, no financing contingency, closed in 30 days. And I really had no idea how I was going to pull that off. But I went to Chad and I said, "Listen, this is the deal. How about, in addition to me bringing in work as a lawyer, we do this deal together. You put the down payment down. I'll do all the work on the side. I think we can refinance and get your money back, within 2 years. Once we get your money back, we'll split it 50-50. And that was the first deal that Chad and I did together. That was the first time I ever technically raised money for the deal. So that happened. And then a light bulb just went off in my head where I was like, holy smokes, like I ended up with 50% of this deal raising money I have no money of my own into the deal. If I work hard and get it done, I'll end up with 50% of this thing. So I went and found another deal. Same thing, 11-unit. I needed $88,000. So then I went and raised $88,000, paid them 10% return on their money. I made no money until they got all their money back. And before I knew it, I'd done that, 3 or 4 times within 2 years. And I had a pretty significant little portfolio. I had like 40 or 50 units in Maine. And I started bringing Chad in more and more on what I was doing on the side. And then he's like, "Dude, what are you doing?" He's like, "Why are you so priced in law? Like, what if, how many do you think you could get if you do this full time?" And I was like, "Well, I don't think we can do that many in Maine. Maine's a small market. There's not that many, units that are of significant size. Like if you want to find a 100-unit apartment complex, there's not that many in Maine." And so I was like, "Look, if we want to do this full time, we've got to go out of state." And so we found some I went to a couple of conferences. I found a couple of operators in the Charleston area, which is where we're looking to invest. And essentially, I was practicing law, building a portfolio until it got to a point to where the cash flow from the real estate side outweighed what I was doing with the law, and it made more sense to transition to full-time real estate. And all that happened in a pretty short amount of time, to where we took it from that little small portfolio in Maine to boom, 1,200 units that we've closed in the last 3 years.
That is absolutely unreal, man. Talk to me about the transition from going from law to real estate, because it sounds like it was pretty easy, right? But what the detail that I really want is give us a snapshot of what it was like in the weeds of that whole decision process, to where you're like, man, if I go full time with this, it would be cool. But I also went to school for this. I also enjoy law. There's got to be this battle back and forth between which one do I do? How do you make that decision? How did you go about all that?
Well, I would say that it was pretty easy for me, because I saw the future. Like I saw, okay, we've got a chance right here. We've got momentum in multifamily. It's getting easier to raise money. We've got, we've turned around some really good projects. If we stay the course right now, we will hit a pretty cool financial outcome here. And I started seeing mailbox money come in, whereas I knew that I wasn't going to make any money in the law unless I was billing hours. And so for me, it was like, I've got a chance right here, right now, to build a pretty big passive income stream. and I can always go back to the law. You know, after practicing for a few years, you sort of figure it out and you realize, okay, like this is a constant, you're constantly learning. And I do enjoy the practice of law, but I saw the opportunity in real estate that was never going to come around again for me. At least I didn't think so. And I jumped at it. Basically, my partner was, willing to work with me a little bit and give me the chance to build a portfolio while also paying me a salary to do that. I mean, it's a little bit lower, but it was a shot to keep food on the table and do this thing on the real estate side. And so I just jumped at it. And the fact that I went to school for it really I didn't feel like I'd wasted any time. You know, that skill set has served me time and time again. Thinking like a lawyer, I use that skill set in everything I'm doing. And so I never felt like I was walking away from something or wasted it, because I keep my license. Like I do my continuing ed every year. I'm I'm still active with the bar. I'm just not billing any hours right now.
I love how you look at that as not a waste, because there are some pretty distinct skill sets that you learn when you're practicing law. My youngest brother is an attorney. He's a lawyer as well, and does extremely well. And I've noticed, just from a personality standpoint, he's quite a bit younger than me, just how quickly that career has made him grow up, and how clearly he can communicate with people and how he can relate to people. And it's pretty profound. That's a fascinating journey from going from lawyer to, successful real estate investor. I also want to talk a little bit about transitioning through relationships. And you're just coming off a really exciting weekend. Number one, I want you to talk about that. And you're about ready to open up yet another transition and chapter in November. So talk to us about that.
Yeah. So this past weekend, I got engaged. My soulmate, one of my dreams, and could not be more exciting. Pulled it off Friday night. She said yes, and it's been an amazing weekend, to say the least. And we also have a child that is due to be here, first week of November. So it's a lot going on. It's super exciting.
Yeah. So when you say soulmate, you lit up when you said that. What are some of the things that you've learned just over the years about relationships, connection, intimacy, and what is it about the relationship that makes it work so well?
I'll say that to give anything to a real relationship, to give anything and to appreciate everything in the greatness of a relationship, like, you've got to have a lot of respect for yourself. I think a lot of folks go through this life in relationships that they should not be in, but they don't have they don't have enough respect for themselves to get out of it and do and follow their gut on what they know is right, or B, they don't trust themselves to make the right decision. I mean, every relationship goes through, for any significant relationship, even one with my dad, and especially a spouse or partner. There's tough times, and I got to the point in a previous relationship where there was no way it was ever going to work, and I should have gotten out of it years before I did. But I stayed in that relationship because I didn't trust myself, and I thought that this is just what relationships are. They're supposed to be struggle. This is why every guy at the water cooler complains about their spouse all day, is because these relationships are hard, and they're supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be a grind. And I just said enough. Like, I don't think enough. I don't think people say enough. I don't think in the lack of respect either for themselves, or the lack of not trusting themselves and willing to stay in something that they probably know is not working or that they should get out of because it's either toxic, they're not growing, they stay in it way too long, or they mistakenly got into it, which was, so I forget the original question, Larry, but essentially that that sort of sums up how I arrived at where I finally made the decision. And I will say that when I left, that was the biggest weight was lifted off my shoulders, because I knew it wasn't right for me, knew it wasn't right for her. And then being with someone, right now I remember the question, and then being with Christina, and knowing that we both had the amount of respect that we have for each other, the amount the way we appreciate each other, and the way that we jive and navigate a pretty tough transition from me leaving a relationship, her leaving a relationship, having a 2-year-old, there's a lot there. And so being with someone where in the beginning I was like, look, the only way this is ever going to work is if we're radically transparent with each other. And coming into the relationship that I'm hurting, I know that you're hurting, I know that we are probably not our best self right now. And if we're willing to grow through this together, like, we've got a shot. And she was all into that. I can't explain it, Larry. It's the way that we communicate is so amazing. And I can't describe it other than with soulmate.
We said a lot of things in there that I want to make sure that men definitely catch. Respect and appreciation. So some of these things, what a lot of us do is we go to relationships, and you know this from being an accelerator, we talk about this a lot. We go to relationships with appreciation, curiosity, and respect. That's one of the things that we reinforce constantly. But I think for the most part, what a lot of people do in relationships, especially marriage, is we go into those relationships exactly like how you said. Maybe we're hurting, maybe it's our own baggage, maybe it's our own experiences, and we don't necessarily take the time to learn new skill sets of like, okay, well, if I'm going to be appreciative, that's an adjective, right? If I'm going to be appreciative, but what does that actually mean? Like, how do I operate when I'm being appreciative to her? And I think a lot of us know what respect is, and we know what respect should look like, but at the same time, we don't necessarily operate in the most respectful way, either on her side or our side or both at times, because it's an extremely emotionally charged relationship. And sometimes if we don't understand how the other person is operating, we can come to a conversation or an interaction with defense. And sometimes defense will also, what will come to a head is disrespect, right? So appreciation is something really, really big though. Most of us, what we do is we come to every conversation and interaction with expectation and agenda. Sometimes we even go to the entire marriage with expectation and agenda. It's like, hey, if you're going to be married to me, then I expect that you're going to operate in a certain way. And if that expectation is not fulfilled, we're going to have problems. Instead, you come to the relationship with appreciation. So, because I'll tell you, I mean, through communication and connection, you always have to stay very appreciative and curious with your spouse, both her and you. Otherwise, what happens is there's resentment. And I love how you said, I can't remember what adjective you used, but it was full transparency. We have to be very, very transparent with where we're at. Being curious and appreciative, sometimes you don't hear what you want to hear. But if you think about it, like, so if my wife, and I'm sure if Christina does this to you, if my wife shares something with me that I'm like, oh, that stings a little bit, right? But she does it in a very so I'll give you an example. My wife, being the operator of the size of platform that we do, I could literally be on a device at all times, if I don't create boundaries around that. And there have been times where I have not been great about those boundaries. And my wife, in a very respectful way, right? Very respectful way, she'll be like, hey, I see that you're on your phone a lot lately, between the hours of 5 and 9. And my thoughts around that the story that I'm telling myself is, man, are maybe we're not as important to you as some of the things that are going on, within your platform, within your group. And, that's the story I'm telling myself. Like maybe I'm not a priority right now. I know I'm a huge priority, but maybe I'm not a priority right now. And when I have those thoughts, the feelings that I have are, man, that kind of hurts, because truly what I want with you, Larry, this is my wife talking, is I want to be connected to you in a really deep way between the hours of 5 and 9. And I don't want you to be on your phone. Now, if I come to that now, if I'm defensive and not curious, that could totally fire off in a direction we don't want it to go in. But when I'm curious and appreciative, it's not necessarily, that's some tough love that I need to hear. In order for me to appreciate that, I have to be like, man, thank you for telling me that. Right? Because if you didn't tell me that, maybe I wouldn't have realized some of the things that I'm not aware of right now. But number two, now that I know that and you've said it out loud, I appreciate the fact that you're not holding it in and being emotionally resentful. And then it's then being articulated in other ways. It could be the silent treatment. It could be passive aggressiveness. It could be withholding love. It could be withholding affection. It could be withholding sex. All these things that, men and women will do when our expectations aren't being met, but instead embracing like, hey, thank you for sharing that feedback with me. Because now with that feedback, I can now make pivots that I otherwise didn't know about. But I love that you said that, man.
That's phenomenal. Phenomenal explanation, Larry. I mean, I think one of the first conversations we had was like, look, and a conversation we still have is, look, I'm happy. I'm happy in here, even without you, right? And you are a shining light without me. We are, choosing to do this journey of life and love and together. We both think it's better together, but at the end of the day, we both have a really firm understanding that she doesn't need me, and she doesn't need me to fulfill some expectations that she's set, and I'm the same way, and I think that that's just really a reflection on us bringing lessons from previous relationships to this current relationship, and listening and really focusing on what are you saying, and how do I improve, to to make you feel seen, heard, and cherished.
Yeah, man. Seen, heard, and cherished, and or safe. Those are the three biggest needs of our women. I want to wrap this up with two more questions. Number one, I want to ask you, you've been a part of the Accelerator now for a handful of months. You've definitely been such an asset and such an engaged part of the group. I would say out of all the guys in the group, you probably have the youngest kids, which is really, really cool, because I got to tell you, guys who join our program, when they join us when their kids are younger, or when maybe their relationship with their wife is still, within the single digits, there's a part of me that's kind of jealous of that, because I'm like, man, I floundered for a good 10 years in my relationship with my wife. And I definitely floundered the first 6 years of being a father. Like, I didn't know which end was up. I didn't know what to do. All these things that we talk about, communication, creating an environment of psychological safety, creating a vision for your relationship, clearly communicating, being an active listener, loving her and her love languages, and the kids too, not in the way I want to give it, using emotional validation, even the skill set of what we call walking the cube through communication. There's a part of me that's very envious that guys like yourself can come in and learn a thing or two about this. But I'd really love to know what has been most meaningful to you from either a relationship with Christina, maybe it's connection, or being prepared for the next newcomer that's coming next month, or professionally.
Man, I'll say, Larry, the group, I feel like I got the cheat codes to the game, to be honest. I mean, how you, I don't know if you were a gamer back in the day, but
Heck yeah, man. I know
when
exactly
you
what
got
you're talking about.
when you got the codes, it's easy. You can win. And not that this is something I'm trying to win, but I feel like that call every week um, sort of hits the reset button for me. It's been kind of crazy because we're like going on, and so I've missed last week's, but I every I'm in a Tuesday group, and so every time I get off that call, I'm ready to use the new skills. I'm like ready to put it into play, and my communication is it's so much better, not only with Christina but with clients and with with Will, who's 2.5. I feel like it's improved essentially every aspect of my life with my communication, and it's helped me listen, and get out of my own head when I'm not. It's also comforting knowing that I'm not the only one going through this thing, and having a group of guys that are elite and in their own professions and crushing it in their lives. um Being able to talk through some of the problems they're having and being like, all right, it's kind of an equalizer, and it's like having the cheat codes.
Dude, I got to tell you, I have never, ever, ever heard that analogy, but I love it. I absolutely love that. In fact, I remember, I mean, you talk about cheat codes. I mean, listen, man, I'm 46 years old, but I remember the cheat codes for Nintendo, like for Contra. For those of you guys who are over 40 and played Contra, which was one of the baddest war games on Nintendo, is up, up, down, down, left, right, A, B, select, start, gave you 30 lives. So you could basically finish the game. But yeah, you're right. And even to put this into some kind of perspective, even from a professional standpoint, like I would call myself an extreme rookie real estate investor. I mean, I've got, a handful of deals to my name, but I'm still very, very green. And when I need to learn, quote unquote, the cheat codes of like, hey, how do I shortcut my learning curve as much as possible, make the fewest mistakes as possible, and go out and do this as successfully as I possibly can, it's not by making rookie mistakes. It's by learning from people who have 1,200 doors like yourself that can be like, hey, man, don't go left, go right. Don't go right, go straight. Pump the brakes. This is not the deal for you. Move on to the next one, right? So I love the cheat code analogy. That was gold, man. In fact, we might just title this one. That one's good. Final question.
It's great to be able to lean on folks that.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, go
I
for
was
it.
going to say that, to be a new dad coming into this, and working with folks that have been in the group for been in the group for a while and that have older kids, it is just gold. I mean, they are absolute phenomenal mentors, and it's given me a lot of comfort, going into fatherhood, knowing that, all right, this solid group right here, I know that I can bounce anything off anybody, and somebody's probably done it before.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I think we've seen it all at this point. The one other question I have for you too, and this is what we call one of the other skill sets that we like to teach. I'm always so curious when I haven't asked this question every time, but I'm always so very appreciative and curious about what the answer is, because I think this question really puts people in a different state of mind, even a different place. And that is, so if we were to hit the fast forward button and we are now 30 years into the future, and you're at dinner with your family, and I'm not sure how many people are at the table with you, right? As far as your kids, I imagine Christina will be there, but I want you to imagine for a moment looking at everybody's faces, the joy, the connection, the memories that you guys have made as a family over the next 30 years. And everyone grabs their glass and they hold it up and they toast to an amazing life and family together. And I'm not saying everything is perfect, sunshine and rainbows, right? But every person takes a moment to reflect on some of the most impactful moments, some of the greatest and most fond memories that you and your family have created amongst each other. And the question I have for you is, what are they telling you?
they're appreciating Christina and I for showing them how to love, showing them how to build a successful relationship, and for giving them the a solid foundation and a blueprint for them carrying out their story. I mean, I don't want kids to live my life. I want them to have their own experiences. And so hoping that we're celebrating the fact that we didn't push anything on them. We let them make their choices and follow their passions. We were always there for them. And the word that keeps coming back to me is that we provided a solid foundation, and we provided a solid foundation and a blueprint for how to treat people, how to treat each other, and how to you know, carry out a successful marriage.
So not just telling people how to have a successful relationship, but the theme, what you're talking about is like, you want to show them.
Right. Yes. We want to show them. And I hope that those are the emotions that and the way that my heart felt, you know, when I was explaining. I hope that the people around the table feel the same thing I just felt.
I love that, man. I know I said I had one more question for you, but now you got me really, really curious, because I think this last question will really, really hit the men in the hearts of give them some marching orders, give them some ideas, some to-dos. How do you show your kids, or what's your plan to show your kids?
So I think the first thing is to, and Christina and I talk about this all the time, is first of all, you know, we've got to show them that the marriage comes first, and that this relationship, me and Christina, is a priority, taken through, you know, John Rosemont's theme of the marriage has to come first, and showing them that we love you very much, but as you know, mom and dad need to like each other, and we've got to prioritize this so that we can have a safe and good foundation for you guys. And so I think it's being affectionate and showing that we do care, listening. If we do have hard conversations in front of our children, showing them how to listen, showing them how we respond. That's not an outburst, not defensive. That's you know, a response that you can be proud of the next day, and go into problem solving with a solution, not with a solution oriented mind. And so I think you show them how to do that by showing them how you solve your problems, because when you're in love and everything's golden, it's easy to be in a relationship. It's easy because everything just flows. But when you have to have hard conversations, that's when I feel like you need to step up. And when if they have to happen in front of your children, like, that's your opportunity. Like, when you and your spouse or your partner, your wife, are not on the same page on something, you know, if it's appropriate, you've got a golden opportunity to show them how you solve problems. And if they can learn that, they can go anywhere.
Yeah, amen to that, man. I truly, truly believe in that as well. I think we can. I heard another podcast guest say it this way, and I thought it was fascinating. He said, imagine you're in the movie and your kids are in the audience when it comes to your marriage. And what movie do you want to show them? You know, what are the characters doing, right? How are they interacting? How are they treating each other? Are they enjoying what they seeing? Would they give it a top 10 rating, or would the critics give it a thumbs down, right? I thought that was a pretty fascinating analogy. And man, I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I want to make sure we have a lot of guys who are really interested in real estate and real estate investing. I know that you've got a couple of resources that you can point the audience in the direction of. And to be honest, like, I would love to be on that short list of opportunities that come across your desk. So please share if with me, if you're cool with that. But the guys in the audience who want to get started in real estate investing, I'm sure they would love to know where to go.
Yeah, absolutely. And so to give you a little bit of context here, there's really four of us. It's me, it's Chad. Chad is, he's older. He's built a portfolio. He's also a lawyer. He's my law partner. And then there's me. I handle legal stuff, due diligence stuff. And then there's our partners, Jennings and Yaden Smith, and they handle construction management, property management, asset management. They've got a lot of experience in those realms. That's the foundation of our partnership. And those are the different skill sets we bring to the table. For resources, the absolute best source of the best resource that's free on the internet right now is My First Million in Multifamily Facebook page. That is a absolute gold mine for folks that are looking to learn about real estate investing. If you're pretty comfortable with real estate investing and you're looking to take it up a notch, there's the deal room, My First Million in Multi deal room. That is a little bit more sophisticated step. So depending on where you're at in your real estate investing journey, maybe the Facebook page is a starting point for you. Or if you're looking to hit the gas and move, maybe the deal room is appropriate for you. That is where actual deals are getting made. That's where sophisticated conversations and Zoom calls are happening, where people will bring a deal that they're doing, and we will walk through the underwriting. We will punch holes in it. We'll help them problem solve some of the either financing issues, the due diligence issues, or the CapEx issues they're having. If you're complete newbie, brand new, and looking to get into it, Jennings and Yaden and Live Oak Investment have a course that walks you. It's 80 hours of content, different modules, walking you through exactly how we do our deals. And so there's really 3 tiers depending on where you're at. As far as deal access, we do 506B syndications. And so what that means is we are working with investors who are usually needs to be an accredited investor. If they're not accredited investor, then that's fine too. We've just got to tweak some paperwork. But there has to be a substantial prior relationship. And there's some litigation over whether or not a Facebook friend suffices for that. General rule is that you need to know the person on other aspects of life before you do a deal with them in a 506B syndication. So there's some different levels, different options for folks depending on where you're at on your journey.
Well, guys, not to worry, we're going to have all those links in the show notes for you. So if obviously if what Nick shared with you today really resonated, and obviously we want to give you guys tremendous value around transitions in life, professional, personal, navigating parenthood, how to communicate, how to be a better listener. And for those of you guys who are more interested in learning more about real estate and what Nick's working on, we're going to have all the links in the show notes for you guys. All you have to do is go to thedadedge.com/Friday21. Again, thedadedge.com/Friday21. Nick, this was amazing, man. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, Larry.
You bet, man. Gentlemen, go out, live legendary. Take care.
All right.